his smirk cut deeper than any blade. My father stood there with his mistress, her baby in her arms, looking at me like I was nothing. Like my Marine uniform meant nothing. Like 40 years of silence from my mother meant nothing. The lawyer cleared his throat and opened the envelope with my name written across it in my grandmother's handwriting. But what came next would change everything. The rain hammered Boston that November morning, coming down in sheets that turned the world grey and cold. I sat in my car outside the law firm of Whitman and Ellis, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. The wipers groaned with every sweep, fighting a losing battle against the downpour. 4 days. That's all it had been since Grandma Rose died. 4 days since the world shifted under my feet, and here I was about to walk into that building to face him. My father, Richard Bennett, the man who'd traded our family for a woman younger than me. I looked down at my marine dress blues. The fabric was damp despite my best efforts to keep it pristine. 3 tours in Afghanistan, squad leader. Bronze Star with valor. None of it had ever been enough for him. I was the daughter who should have been a son. The Marine who should have been a CEO, the woman who should have been silent. Elena, Mom said softly from the passenger seat. Her voice trembled like leaves in wind. We don't have to do this today. We could reschedule. No, I said, steadying my breath. Grandma wanted us here. We're going. I helped Mom from the car, holding the umbrella over her as rain slashed sideways, finding every gap in our defenses. She trembled against me, this woman who'd spent 40 years making herself small, making herself invisible, making room for his ego and his affairs. But today she held her head high. Today we climbed those stone steps together. And there he was. Richard Bennett stood under the building's overhang. Not a drop of rain touching his immaculate navy suit. His silver hair was combed back with military precision, his tie knotted perfectly, his shoes reflecting the grey morning light. He looked like success. He looked like power. He looked like every boardroom he'd ever conquered. Beside him stood Sophia James, 27 years old. Black dress that cost more than most people's rent, lipstick untouched by weather or worry. And in her arms, wrapped in a blanket that probably came from some boutique on Newbury Street, their newborn son. The baby he'd always wanted, just not with my mother. Not with the woman who'd given him 40 years of her life. Sophia leaned into him, her head tilting onto his shoulder with practiced grace. She looked at me across the rain-slicked marble and smiled. That smile said everything. She'd won. He'd chosen her. And today, at the reading of my grandmother's will, she expected to collect her prize. Elena, Dad said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey. He looked at my marine dress blues like they were a costume I'd rented for the occasion. Like the bronze star on my chest was a participation trophy. Still playing soldier, I see. Playing soldier. 3 tours. 15 Marines under my command. Nights when mortars fell like rain worse than this Boston storm. But to him I was playing. Richard, Mom said quietly. Just his name. Nothing more. He didn't even look at her. His eyes stayed on me, that familiar smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. The same smirk from when I told him I was enlisting. The same smirk from when my marriage fell apart. The same smirk that said I was a disappointment wearing a uniform that couldn't hide the truth. Sophia shifted the baby, making sure we could see him clearly. The resemblance is remarkable, isn't it? She said sweetly. He has Richard's eyes. His grandfather would have been so proud. His grandfather. My grandfather. The man whose portrait hung in Dad's study, whose legacy Dad invoked in every speech, whose name carried weight in Boston's old money circles. That grandfather would have been proud of this baby. Not of me. Never of me. Mom's fingers found mine, squeezing once. Together, without a word to him or to her, we walked past them into the building. The glass doors slid open, releasing a rush of warm air scented with leather and old paper. The receptionist looked up from her desk, her smile professional and practiced. The Bennett estate. Yes, I said. Conference room 3. Mr. Whitman is waiting. The hallway stretched before us, all dark wood and dim sconces, carpet thick enough to swallow footsteps. It felt like walking into a vault, somewhere secrets went to be locked away or finally released. Mom walked beside me, her heels clicking softly, her breathing controlled. 40 years of practice at composing herself. 40 years of smiling through humiliation. The conference room door was heavy oak. I pushed it open. The room was designed to intimidate. A mahogany table that could seat 20 stretched down the center. Leather chairs that cost more than enlisted Marines made in a month lined both sides. Behind the head of the table, floor-to-ceiling shelves held law books no one had opened in decades. The chandelier cast amber light that pooled on the polished wood, making everything look like it had been dipped in honey. Mr. Harold Whitman sat at the head of the table, silver glasses perched on his nose, grey suit impeccable despite the weather. He stood when we entered, nodding respectfully. Mrs. Bennet. Miss Hayes. Hayes. My married name. The name I'd kept after the divorce just to avoid being a Bennet again. We took our seats on one side of the table. The leather was cold through my uniform. Mom sat beside me, her purse clutched in her lap, her wedding ring still on her finger after everything. After all the late nights when he didn't come home. After all the perfume that wasn't hers. After all the credit card charges at hotels where no conferences were held. The door opened again. Dad entered first, holding it for Sophia like a gentleman. Like he was still capable of courtesy. They took their seats across from us. He leaned back, ankle crossed over knee, the picture of relaxed confidence. She arranged herself carefully, the baby position just so, making sure the little face was visible, making sure we could see what she'd given him that Mom never could a son. Shall we begin? Mr. Whitman asked. Please, Dad said, that CEO voice coming out. We have a busy day ahead. Busy day. His mother had been dead 4 days and he had a busy day. Mr. Whitman opened a leather folder with the kind of care you'd use for something fragile or explosive. We are here for the formal reading of the last will and testament of Margaret Rose Bennet, executed 6 weeks prior to her passing. 6 weeks. When she was still walking her garden. When she still had her morning tea in the sunroom. When she knew exactly what was coming and exactly what she was doing. Before we begin, Sophia interrupted, her voice honeyed but sharp underneath. I just want to make sure everything is in order. Richard mentioned that Margaret had been having some confusion toward the end. There was no confusion, Mr. Whitman said firmly. Mrs. Bennet was examined by 2 physicians who certified her mental capacity. The will is legally binding. Dad's fingers drummed against the table. That tell of his when things weren't going according to script. Of course, he said smoothly. Mother was always sharp. Right until the end. Sharp. Yes, she was. Sharp enough to see through everyone in this room. Mr. Whitman began with the legal preamble. I, Margaret Rose Bennet, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previous wills and codicils. The language washed over me. Sound mind. Sound body. Grandma's mind had been a fortress. Her body had betrayed her at the end, but her mind never wavered. She knew exactly what she was doing when she called her lawyer 6 weeks ago. She knew who would be sitting at this table. She knew how it would end. The estate consists of the following, Mr. Whitman continued. The residence at 47 Beacon Hill, the lakeside cottage in Vermont. Investment accounts totaling approximately $8.7 million. Various personal effects including jewelry, artwork, and family heirlooms. And 1 property in Willow Creek, purchased 40 years ago and maintained through a trust. $8.7 million. Mom's sharp intake of breath was barely audible. In 40 years of marriage, Dad had never told her the real number. He'd kept her on an allowance while millions sat in accounts she couldn't touch. We'll begin with specific bequests, Mr. Whitman said. He looked up, meeting Dad's eyes. To my son, Richard James Bennet, I leave the portrait of his father, currently hanging in the study of my Boston home. The silence that followed was complete. Even the rain seemed to pause. The portrait? Dad's voice cracked like ice. That's all? The portrait, Mr. Whitman confirmed, and nothing more. Sophia's hand flew to Dad's arm. There must be a mistake. She promised Richard said she promised. To Miss Sophia James, Mr. Whitman continued, as if she hadn't spoken. No bequest is made. The baby chose that moment to cry, a thin wail that seemed to echo off the walls. Sophia bounced him frantically, her face flushing red. This is wrong. She said the baby would inherit. She said the family name needed to continue. She said, Mrs. Bennet said many things, Mr. Whitman interrupted gently. What she wrote is what matters. Dad stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. I'm her son, her only son. The estate comes to me. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Please sit down, Mr. Bennet, Mr. Whitman said. We're not finished. Dad remained standing, his hands flat on the table, leaning forward like he was in a boardroom about to fire someone. Then finish it. Tell me what game she's playing. To Elena Marie Hayes, Mr. Whitman read clearly, his voice cutting through Dad's anger. I leave the entirety of my remaining estate, This includes the residence at Beacon Hill, the cottage in Vermont, all investment accounts, all personal effects, and the property in Willow Creek. The words hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. No, Dad's voice was dangerous now. Quiet. The voice that used to make Mom flinch. No, that's not possible. She wouldn't dare. The will is legal and binding, Mr. Whitman said. She was manipulated, Dad snarled, his eyes cutting to me. You did this. You poisoned her against me. I met his gaze steadily. I haven't spoken to Grandma about money in my entire life. Liar. The word came out like a slap. You were always her favorite. Always running to her when things got hard. Always playing the victim. Richard, Mom said quietly. Stop. He turned on her then. And for the first time all morning, he really looked at her. You knew about this, didn't you? You and her plotting behind my back. I knew nothing, Mom said, her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. Just like I knew nothing about your secretary. Or the conference in Miami that was really a cruise with Stephanie. Or the weekend golf trips that somehow required overnight stays in hotels 20 minutes from our house. The list hung between them, 40 years of betrayals catalogued in a few sentences. That's different, he started. Yes, Mom said, it is. Because I stayed and smiled and made excuses for you. But your mother saw everything, and she chose accordingly. There's one more thing, Mr. Whitman said. He lifted a cream-colored envelope from the folder. My name was written across it in Grandma's distinctive handwriting, the letters slanted from years of arthritis she never complained about. Mrs. Bennet left a letter to be read aloud after the will. This is theatrical nonsense, Dad spat. This is her last wish, Mr. Whitman corrected. He opened the envelope carefully, pulling out pages covered in Grandma's writing. Shall I read it? Do we have a choice? Dad asked bitterly. No, Mr. Whitman said simply. And he began. My dearest Elena, if you're hearing this, then you're sitting in that dreadful conference room, back straight as a board, trying not to cry. Stop trying, dear one. Let them see you feel things. It's not weakness. It's proof you're alive. Richard, my son, I loved you from the moment you were born. I loved you through scraped knees and failed tests and triumphant graduations. I loved you when you married Patricia. And I loved you when you broke her heart over and over again. But love doesn't mean blindness. And it doesn't mean enabling cruelty. You left a good woman for someone who saw your bank account before she saw you. You mocked your daughter for serving our country because she wasn't the son you wanted. You treated family like employees and employees better than family. You confused charm with character, success with worth, and power with respect. Eleanor never asked me for a penny. Do you understand that, Richard? Your daughter, who you called a failure, who you said would never amount to anything, never once asked me for money. She brought me tea on tired afternoons. She listened to my stories about your father, the same ones you were too busy to hear. When her marriage fell apart, yes, I knew about Tom's drinking. About the nights she slept in her car because home wasn't safe. She never used it as currency for sympathy. She simply survived. And then she did more than survive. She thrived. She became a Marine. She led others through danger. She earned medals you'll never understand the weight of. She did it all while you told anyone who'd listen that your daughter was playing soldier and wasting her potential. So I'm not rewarding her, Richard. I'm choosing her. Because she chose all of us even when we didn't choose her back. She chose to show up. She chose to care. She chose to love without keeping score. Patricia, I see you there, quiet as always. You beautiful, patient fool. You deserved better than my son gave you. You deserved Paris and poetry and someone who came home when he said he would. Instead, you got 40 years of loneliness in a full house. But you stayed graceful. You stayed kind. You raised Eleanor to be everything Richard isn't honourable. Honest and actually strong instead of just loud about it. This will is as much for you as for her. Sophia, you're young. You can still choose differently. But if you're only here for money, you should know it's already gone. Richard's business is failing, yes. Richard, I know about the second mortgage, the borrowed funds, the deals that fell through. You're broke, son, in all the ways that matter. If Sophia stays now, at least you'll know it's real. Eleanor, the houses and money are yours. But more than that, I'm giving you permission to stop apologizing for existing. You earned your place in this world 10 times over. Stop letting others convince you otherwise. Use the money to build something. Not a monument to wealth, but something useful. Something kind. The world has enough monuments. Your mother needs you now. She's been invisible for 40 years. Make sure she's seen. Make sure she knows she matters. Take her to Paris. She always wanted to go. But Richard thought Europe was boring unless there were clients to meet. The cottage in Vermont has a new roof. I had it done last month. The garden needs work, but the bones are good. Like you, dear one. Good bones that just need tending. There's a room on the second floor that faces east. I used to sit there and watch the sunrise when your grandfather was dying. It's where I learned that grief and gratitude can exist in the same space. I think you already know this, but the room is yours now to remember it in. Richard, I want you to know that cutting you out brings me no joy. But actions have consequences. You taught me that when you were 7 and broke the neighbor's window. You said hiding it would be worse than admitting it. What happened to that boy? Where did he go? Take your father's portrait. You always loved how successful he looked in it. Stare at it long enough, and perhaps you'll remember that he built his fortune with his family, not in spite of them. He never missed your baseball games. He never forgot your mother's birthday. He never made your mother cry in the bathroom while guests laughed in the living room. If you contest this will, and knowing you, you will know that I've left instructions with Mr. Whitman. Everything goes to charity. Everything. Not a penny will go to anyone in this room except Elena. I've been very clear. I've been very careful. I've been everything you taught me to be in business, Richard. Thorough. One last thing, Elena. There's a pie recipe in my kitchen drawer, in the yellow box with the roses on it. Too much cinnamon in my version, not enough butter. Fix it. Bake it for someone who matters. If no one's around, remember you matter too. Don't keep my good dishes locked away. Use them. Let them chip and stain. That's how you know something has lived instead of just existed. You've existed long enough, dear one. It's time to live. Patricia, there's something for you too. In the bottom drawer of my dresser, wrapped in tissue paper. The pearl necklace Richard gave me for my 60th birthday. I know he told you he was at a conference that day. He wasn't. He was with me, crying about his marriage, promising to change. He never did. But the pearls are beautiful, and they should go to someone who understands their real value. That sometimes we hold on to beautiful things that come from painful places, and that's okay. This letter is my last in politeness and my best manners. I'm speaking truths that should have been spoken years ago. I'm sorry it took my death to say them. Be good to each other. Or if you can't manage that, at least leave each other alone. All my love, and I do mean all of it. Margaret Rose Bennett. Mr. Whitman set the pages down carefully. The room was silent, except for Mom's quiet crying and the rain against the windows. Dad stood frozen, his face cycling through emotions like a broken television. Anger, disbelief, hurt, rage, and finally something that looked almost like recognition, as if he'd just seen himself clearly for the first time. This won't stand, he said, but his voice was hollow. I'll contest it. You'll lose, Mr. Whitman said simply. The will is ironclad. I made sure of it myself. Sophia stood abruptly, the baby crying harder now. This is insane. We have a child. Your mother knew we have a child. A child she never asked for, Mom said quietly. A child born from an affair that destroyed a 40-year marriage. That's not, Sophia started. It's exactly what it is, Mom said. And now you get to raise him with a man who has nothing left but a portrait of his father and the consequences of his choices. Sophia looked at Dad, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. She was 27, holding a baby, standing next to a man who'd just lost everything. The calculation was obvious. The result was inevitable. I need to go, she said. The baby needs to eat. She left without waiting for Dad to follow. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded final. Dad stood alone on his side of the table, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Eleanor, he said, and for a moment he sounded like a father. I know we've had our differences. I stood slowly, my uniform straight, my shoulders back. You told me I was a disappointment every day of my life. You missed my graduation from Parris Island because you had a golf game. You laughed when my marriage ended. You told Mom she was lucky you didn't leave her sooner. Those aren't differences, Dad. Those are choices. I was trying to make you strong, he said weakly. No, I said. You were trying to make me small. There's a difference. I turned to Mom. Let's go. We left him standing there, alone with his father's portrait rights in his empty hands. Mr. Whitman nodded to us as we passed. The estate will be transferred within 30 days, he said. I'll handle everything. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. Mom and I stood under the overhang, breathing in the clean, wet air. She gave it all to you, Mom said softly. She gave it to us, I corrected. Half of everything is yours. Eleanor, no, Mom, you earned every penny of this. Every single penny. You stayed. You raised me. You survived him. Half is yours, and I won't hear another word about it. She started crying again, but this time it was different. This time it was relief. What will you do? She asked. I thought about Grandma's words. Build something useful, something kind. I don't know yet, I said, but something. Something that would make her proud. 3 weeks later, the estate transferred. The numbers were staggering. More money than I'd ever dreamed of. I kept my promise and transferred exactly half to Mom. She called me crying, sitting in her lawyer's office, finally filing for divorce after 40 years. I can leave him, she kept saying. I can actually leave him. You already left him, Mom. This just makes it official. She bought a small condo near the water. Nothing fancy but hers. She painted the walls yellow, Grandma's favorite color. She started taking art classes. She smiled when no one was watching, which told me everything I needed to know about how she was healing. I sold the Beacon Hill house to a young family who promised to fill it with children and laughter. It felt right, letting happiness move into those rooms that had seen too much silence. The Vermont cottage I kept. It needed work, like Grandma said, but the bones were good. I spent weekends there, pulling weeds, painting shutters, learning to be alone without being lonely. But it was the property in Willow Creek that called to me. I drove out on a Thursday morning, following GPS down roads that got smaller and quieter until I found it. A small town that time had touched gently, with one main street and a diner that still had a bell above the door. The property was an old storefront, abandoned for years. Books and Brews, the faded sign read. I stood on the cracked sidewalk, looking through dirty windows at empty shelves and dust-covered floors. You thinking of buying it? I turned to find an older man in coveralls, paint under his fingernails. I already own it, apparently. My grandmother left it to me. His face lit up. You're Margaret's granddaughter. She talked about you. Said you'd come here one day. Said you'd know what to do with it. She did. Every summer when she'd come to check on it. She'd stand right where you're standing and say, my Elena will know what to do with this place. That night, I sat in the Vermont cottage with graph paper and coloured pencils, sketching floor plans. Not just a bookstore. Not just a cafe. Something more. A place where people could come and just be. Where veterans could find quiet. Where single mothers could bring their kids without apology. Where loneliness could soften into solitude. I called it the Hearth. It took 6 months to renovate. I did most of the work myself, partly to save money. Mostly because I needed to build something with my own hands. I sanded floors until my arms ached. I painted walls the color of wheat and sunshine. I built shelves from reclaimed barnwood that still smelled faintly of hay. The menu was simple. Coffee, tea, and Grandma's recipes corrected and perfected. Her orange muffins with more butter. Her apple pie with the right amount of cinnamon. Soup that tasted like someone loved you. I hired 2 people, Sam, a veteran who'd lost his leg in Iraq and made the best coffee I'd ever tasted, and Maria, a single mom who could bake angels out of flour and butter. They understood what we were building without me having to explain it. Opening day came soft and quiet, just a sign in the window that said, open, and me behind the counter in an apron covered in flour. My first customer was a woman in her 70s, Walker clicking against the floor. I knew your grandmother, she said. We were girls together. She said you'd come back. Back? This was hers once. Before your grandfather, before Boston, before everything. This was where she was happiest. I served her tea in one of Grandma's good china cups, the ones I'd brought from Boston. She held it carefully like memory made manifest. Word spread the way small-town word does. The nurses from the night shift started coming in for coffee and silence. Teachers brought papers to grade in corners where the light was good. Veterans found each other without having to say why they were there. Mom moved to Willow Creek after the divorce was final. She bought a cottage 2 streets over, with a garden that faced south and windows that let in light all day. She came to the hearth every morning, bringing her watercolors, painting the people who came and went. I'm documenting joy, she told me. 40 years of documenting sorrow is enough. 6 months after opening, on a grey Tuesday that threatened snow, I was wiping down tables when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up to see Dad standing in the doorway. He looked different, older. His suit was off the rack. His shoes were scuffed. His hair had gone completely grey. Hello, Elena. I straightened, dishcloth still in my hand. What are you doing here? I wanted to see what you built. He looked around slowly, taking in the warm walls. The full shelves, the people reading in corners, the couple sharing a piece of pie. The veteran in the corner teaching a teenager chess. It's beautiful, he said softly. It's warm. That was the point. He stood there, uncertain, no boardroom confidence left. Sophia left. Took the baby to Texas to live with her mother. She's filing for full custody. Says I'm unfit. I said nothing. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like either pity or satisfaction, and I felt neither. I lost the company, he continued. Bankruptcy. The house is gone. The cars. Everything. Except the portrait, I said. He laughed, but it was hollow. Except the portrait. It's in a storage unit in Somerville. $100 a month to store something worth nothing to anyone but me. What do you want, Dad? He met my eyes then, and for the first time in my life, I saw him without his mask. I don't know, I guess. I wanted to see if you were okay. If you were happy. I am good. He turned to leave, then stopped. Your mother looks good. Happy. I saw her painting in the window of that yellow house. She is happy. I never made her happy, did I? No. The simple truth of it hung between us. I'm sorry, he said. I know it doesn't matter now, but I'm sorry. For all of it. For everything I said and didn't say. For choosing wrong every single time I had to choose. I could have said it was okay. Could have offered forgiveness like a gift. But Grandma had taught me that sometimes the kindest thing is truth. I know you're sorry, I said. But sorry doesn't undo 40 years. It doesn't give Mom back her youth or give me back a father who showed up. So thank you for the apology, but I don't need it. I needed a father. That's what I needed. He nodded, absorbing it like a man used to harder hits. Could I? Could I buy a coffee? I have a few dollars. I poured him a cup. Black the way he'd always taken it. He paid with crumpled bills pulled from a wallet that had seen better days. He sat by the window for an hour, watching people come and go. When he left, he nodded once to me. No words, just acknowledgement. He never came back. Mom asked me later if I felt bad for him. No, I said honestly. I feel complete. There's a difference. A year passed. The hearth became what I'd dreamed, a place where loneliness softened into solitude, where silence was comfortable, where people came to be themselves without apology or explanation. I hired 2 more people, James, fresh out of culinary school with loans bigger than dreams but talent that couldn't be taught, and Dorothy, 73, who'd been a librarian for 40 years and knew exactly which book every customer needed before they knew they needed it. The town grew around us, or maybe we grew into the town. Either way, we fit. One morning I was in the back, kneading dough for the day's bread when Sam called out, "Elena, package for you." It was a box, no return address, postmarked from Boston. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a teacup. One of Grandma's good china pieces I thought had all been accounted for. Underneath was a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. Found this in an estate sale. Thought it should come home? A friend of your grandmother's. I held the cup up to the light. There was a chip on the handle, a tiny imperfection that made it real. That made it lived in. I put it with the others, on the shelf where customers could choose them for their tea, where they could chip and stain and prove they'd been used. That afternoon, Mom came in with a new painting. It was the hearth at golden hour, light spilling through windows, people at tables, life happening in all its quiet glory. "It's for you," she said. "It's beautiful." "It's true," she corrected. "That's better than beautiful." We hung it behind the counter where I could see it every day, where it could remind me that we'd built something from ashes, something Grandma would have loved. That night, after closing, I sat in the empty cafe with a cup of tea in one of Grandma's good china cups. The chip on the handle fit perfectly under my thumb. I pulled out the letter Mr. Whitman had given me, the one I'd read 100 times but still kept close. Her handwriting had grown shaky near the end, but the words were clear. Build something useful. Something kind. I looked around at the empty tables that would be full tomorrow, at the shelves of books waiting to be read, at the kitchen where bread was rising for morning. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered to the quiet room. "I built something kind. Somewhere, in whatever comes after this life." I knew she was smiling. Knew she was proud. Knew she was finally fully at rest. The hearth stayed open late on Fridays. Not officially, but I never turned anyone away who needed somewhere to be. That's how I met Catherine. She came in 10 minutes before closing. Rain-soaked and shaking, a bruise blooming on her cheekbone. She stood in the doorway like she might bolt. "We're closed," I said gently, then saw her face properly. "But I just made fresh coffee. Sit wherever you like." She chose the corner table, the one where you could see both doors. I knew that choice. I'd made it myself once. I brought her coffee and Grandma's coffee cake, the one with extra cinnamon. She wrapped her hands around the mug like it was an anchor. "I don't have any money," she whispered. "It's on the house." We sat in silence while she ate. When she was done, I asked, "Do you need somewhere to stay tonight?" She nodded, tears coming fast. I made a call. Martha, who ran the women's shelter 2 towns over, answered on the second ring. "I can be there in 20 minutes, she said. While we waited, I told Catherine about my ex-husband, about the nights I slept in my car, about how leaving felt like dying and being born at the same time. "Does it get easier?" she asked. "No," I said honestly. "It gets different." Then one day you realize different became better when you weren't looking. Martha arrived with blankets and gentle words. As Catherine left, she squeezed my hand. 6 months later, she came back. Hair cut short, wearing scrubs, smiling for real. "I got into nursing school," she said. "I wanted you to know." These were the moments that made everything worth it. 2 years after the hearth opened, I got a call from Mr. Whitman. "Your father passed away," he said simply. "Heart attack." It was quick. I sat down waiting to feel something. Grief, relief, anything. But there was just quiet. "He left you something," Mr. Whitman continued. "The portrait. His father's portrait. It was the only thing he had left, and he wanted you to have it." "Why?" "The note just says she built something." "I didn't." The portrait arrived a week later. I hung it in the back office where only I would see it. Not as a monument to him or his father, but as a reminder that choosing differently was always possible. Mom cried when she heard. "Not for him," she said, "but for the life that could have been if he'd chosen love over pride even once." "He never knew you," she said to me. That was his loss. Sophia sent a card. No return address, just a photo of the baby, not a baby anymore, a toddler with Dad's eyes and what looked like a gentler smile. On the back, his name is Marcus. "After your grandmother." I thought you should know. I kept the photo. Not for Dad, but for Marcus. Someday, if he came looking for his family's story, I wanted to have something to show him besides wreckage. 5 years in, the hearth had become something bigger than I'd imagined. We hosted veteran support groups on Wednesdays, book clubs for seniors on Thursdays, free lunch for anyone who needed it on Mondays, no questions asked. Sam had become my manager, running things with military precision and civilian warmth. Maria's daughter, Rosa, worked afternoons while studying for her teaching degree. James had paid off his loans and started a scholarship fund for other kids from Willow Creek who wanted to go to culinary school. Mom painted every day now. Her work sold in galleries in Boston and Burlington. She donated half of everything she made to the women's shelter. "Paying it forward," she said. "Or backward, sideways. Whatever direction help moves in." One December evening, snow falling soft and thick. I was closing up when I found an envelope under the door. No name, no address, just "thank you" written on the front. Inside was a photo of the hearth from across the street, every window glowing warm against the snow. On the back, in handwriting, I almost recognized "Your grandmother would be so proud." We all are. The women who knew her. I never found out who sent it, but I framed it and hung it next to Mom's painting. That night, I made Grandma's pie. Finally got it right, less cinnamon. More butter. Baked until the crust was the color of good memories. I ate a piece alone in the quiet cafe, using her good china, letting the fork scrape against the plate in a way that would have horrified anyone who cared more about things than moments. "Thank you," I said to the empty room, to the woman who'd seen me when no one else did. "Thank you for seeing what I could build." The next morning, the hearth filled with its usual morning crowd. The nurse finishing her night shift, the teacher grading papers before school. The veterans in their corner, coffee black, conversation minimal but comfortable. Mom at her table by the window, painting the snow as it fell. I moved between them all, refilling cups, bringing plates, existing in this space I'd created from equal parts grief and hope. This was what Grandma had given me. Not just money, not just property, but permission to stop shrinking. Permission to take up space. Permission to build something in my own image, not in the shadow of someone else's expectations. The bell above the door chimed. A young Marine walked in, uniform crisp, eyes tired. She looked around uncertainly. "Sit anywhere you like," I told her. Coffee's fresh. She chose the quiet corner, the one where you could put your back to the wall. I brought her coffee and Grandma's coffee cake without asking. Sometimes you just know what someone needs. Thank you, Mom, she said. Elena, I corrected. Just Elena. She smiled, shoulders dropping just a little. Thank you, Elena. I left her to her quiet, to her coffee, to whatever she was carrying. The hearth would hold it all. Later, as she left, she stopped at the counter. This place. It feels safe. That's the point, I said. She nodded, understanding passing between us. The understanding of women who'd served, who'd survived, who'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is build something soft in a hard world. After she left, I stood in my cafe. My mother painting in the window, snow falling like blessings, and whispered to the grandmother who'd made it all possible. I used the good china. I let it chip. It lived, Grandma. We're all living. And somewhere, carried on the winter wind, I swear I heard her laugh.